I'm Samantha Kleinberg. I'm a professor of computer science at Stevens Institute of Technology, and my research is on artificial intelligence and health, and primarily on causal inference from observational time series data. What's super interesting is you have all this data generated from hospitals, from patients during daily life, and then being able to figure out, why do things actually happen? And so why are some patients regaining consciousness and others aren't? Who's going to develop a secondary brain injury after their stroke? We look at, for patients with chronic diseases like diabetes, also why does glucose too low or too high during daily life? And so being able to make sense of all this data that's routinely collected and actually make scientific insights from this and learn generalizable knowledge from data that's kind of a mess. So at Stevens, we've been working on one component is causal inference from observational data. So learning causal models from time series when you might have missing variables, when the causal models might actually change over time, when you have missing data, confounding, all these problems. So the fundamental computer science part. And then the second part has been applying these to problems in stroke and diabetes. And so the models are domain independent, but we've had long-term collaborations with people treating patients in the neurological ICU with stroke, and then also in diabetes where it's not the doctor treating the patient, it's actually the patient themselves who has type 1 or type 2 diabetes who's making decisions all day long about how do they influence their glucose, what should they do to counteract low or high, how much insulin do they need to cover a particular meal, how is their exercise going to affect it. And so it's both the doctors and the patients on that side. And so as a result of that, we've also been collaborating with people in cognitive science on decision making. And so how do people actually use the information that we give them, and how does it interact with their existing beliefs and their understanding about diabetes? Because you're not going in with a black box. The doctors and patients already have beliefs and understanding about what affects glucose, what's happening during stroke recovery, what are the causes of brain swelling, and then we extract all this new information from the data. But it's not a machine that's making the decision, it's the human that's making the decision with all the stuff that they already know, right? And that's a really challenging problem. So we've been working on that. And then we have another side project on automated dietary monitoring. And so essentially you can buy a pedometer for physical activity or a Fitbit, and you want to make it so you can buy something like that for food. And so we work on developing methods for automatically figuring out exactly what you're eating and how much you're eating from body-worn sensors. It seems a little bit different than the other stuff. The idea is that that would become part of the causal inference. And so once we can measure nutrition, we can measure physical activity already, we can measure glucose, now we can do really awesome personalized modeling for people with diabetes because suddenly everything is quantifiable. The biggest thing that's coming and the biggest challenge or sort of unexplored avenue has been the people side. And so we've been developing methods that are more accurate, that can deal with bigger problems in the data, that can deal with time series data. But we haven't yet figured out how do they interact with humans. And so it's going to be a human at the end who makes decisions with it. And we don't really have an understanding of people's behavior, and especially lay people who aren't computer scientists, how they understand the output of AI machine learning and integrate that into their workflow. And so maybe the most complex model that's super accurate is not going to be the best model for these people to make these decisions about health, especially if they have time constraints. Maybe they have existing beliefs about diabetes or stroke. Maybe they can't modify everything that's in the model, and so might learn, risk factors involving family history, which aren't so useful if you're going to make an intervention, right? So definitely the people side, and then the second part is always data, access to data, and then data quality, because we're doing stuff in daily life where, you're going about your life, you're not, in just a room. Sensors fail, there are all sorts of devices that have higher error rates, and that's just a persistent challenge. Outside of work, I like to run. I've also run a few 5Ks with my students, and you can see on our website, we've run our 5Ks with matching t-shirts, and we've had a friendly competition with students versus professors, though in the last round, the professors triumphed. It's exciting.